they could run Michelle Obama. And if they do,
welcome Michelle Obama!
Michelle Obama is the most popular woman in America.
You know I hate politics.
You can forget about the disclaimer. I'm convinced that Michelle Obama is running for president in 2024.
Systemic racism, pepper spray, and rubber bullets on peaceful protesters.
She's following the exact same formula that Barack did to become president. Michelle was the keynote speaker at the 2020 Democrat convention, just like Barack was in 2004. Barack once ran a voter registration organization. Now, so does Michelle.
That's how we change America.
Also, Barack Obama based his candidacy on his personal story. Michelle has done the exact same thing. But like Barack, Michelle tells a life story that is more fiction than fact.
Maybe somebody's going to discover that I shouldn't be here.
Now, come along on an investigation into the real Michelle Obama and her plan for power. I found out Michelle's father worked for the Democrat Party machine.
My father, he was a precinct captain in Chicago. People would come for money.
It turns out Michelle was never a part of the Black community.
In that household, there was fear.
You talk like a white girl.
You could get your butt kicked if you talked like a white girl. What was going on in the 70s was what we called white flight.
The only person doing white flight in the 1970s was Michelle Robinson.
You're told by a school counselor you're not Princeton material.
You're Black, maybe you're stretching.
Michelle was no victim of racism. In fact, Michelle has been running from the Black community her whole life.
Hyde Park is the best neighborhood.
And Michelle sold out the Black community working for the mayor of Chicago.
This is turning into a ghetto. You better run.
They just take our home like this here.
And she sold them out as a hospital executive, kicking poor Black patients out of the ER.
Yeah, like that.
I learned that to get power, Michelle pretends to be part of the Black community she exploited all her life.
Lo and behold, trying to pay your own rent. Imposter syndrome.
All-out war between the pigs and us.
And it turns out Michelle's close friend and mentor was an anti-American radical.
The politics of fear.
Because of fear. Your fear. They want you to be afraid of change. We're working to change the future of this nation. We need you. Are you in?
Fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
And to transform America, Michelle plans to rule America come Election Day 2024.
All right, so everybody that's listening, if you're listening to us on one of the 20 radio stations, we greatly appreciate that. Podcast, YouTube people, thanks so much. This probably will get censored on YouTube, so we won't focus too much on that. But for the radio listeners, we really appreciate that. Very good guest on today, Joel Gilbert, book and film that he has out. It's Michelle Obama 2024. As the election is coming up, it's a very important topic. And he's holding it up right now. If you're watching this, you'll see this. If you're listening to this, I hope that you go out to michelleobama24.com. You can look into where you can get the book and also find the movie. Joel, thanks so much for coming on the program today.
Okay, great to be here. Thank you.
And you've done a lot of different things in music with Bob Dylan, many other films you've done on musicians. I hope people really do look into you besides this film and book in general, because you've done many different things. Trayvon Martin, Barack Obama, the list goes on and on. I want to kick it around. And, I kind of gave a little brief synopsis about you just a second ago. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about you in general before we start off about the book and film?
Well, I've made a number of films, as you mentioned, for many years. I started out making music history films on Bob Dylan, comedy on Elvis Presley and Paul McCartney. And then I made a couple films about Middle East politics and Islamism, Atomic Jihad and Farewell Israel, Bush, Iran, and the Revolt of Islam. Made several films on American politics about Barack Obama. I'm pretty well known for Dreams from My Real Father and There's No Place Like Utopia about progressivism in America. Trump, The Art of the Insult. I had a major expose about the Trayvon Martin case. I showed that the case against George Zimmerman that was used to found Black Lives Matter was a complete hoax, that the key witness that the prosecution used, Rachel Gentel, the chubby Haitian girl, was not Trayvon's girlfriend, was not on the phone with him, and everybody knew it. It was a fake witness. So I've got a number of films about music, history, and politics, and this is my latest one, Michelle Obama, 2024, her real life story on Plan for Power.
But were you always a big politics guy, or did that come on later on in life? Because it seems like music was the big deal to you starting off.
No, I've always been interested in politics and history, actually. I studied in college Middle East history, the history of Islam, and politics. I have a degree in economics and politics. So I've always been into that. I started making films. I actually worked for Paramount Pictures for about a year or two when I came to LA in the finance department, and then started making films about music and switched over to politics after a couple years.
We saw Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the primary against Biden. He's dropped out. Now it's pretty much Biden by himself. If you want to count Marianne Williamson, you can, but it is Biden by himself. Obviously, we all know that the dementia issue with Biden, also him falling up and down the stairs. There's a serious issue as far as the age goes with President Joe Biden. Michelle Obama, which is what your book and your movie is about, why do you feel like she's going to step up and run for 2020 in 2024? Because she's made it very much the case that she's not going to run. She said it multiple times on air and radio, TV, whatever it may be.
Okay, first of all, you alluded to some of the reasons Biden is probably not running. The fact that it's not just that he's old, it's that his record is so bad. Inflation, the economy, the border, you name it. Voters, Democrat voters especially, don't want him. The down ballot Democrats don't want him. They're afraid he'll bring down the ticket. Michelle Obama, despite a few protests that she's not interested in politics, in fact, is a very political person. She's a better politician than her husband, Barack. She's from a political family. Her father was a precinct captain in Chicago. Michelle grew up in Jesse Jackson's house. She was friends with his daughter, Santita. So politics has been her whole life. She married a politician. She married her father. And I noticed that after Trump got elected, Michelle started doing the exact same things that Barack did before he ran for president. Barack had a voter registration organization in Chicago called Project Vote. Sure enough, Michelle founded something called When We All Vote and got $26 million from George Soros to run this voter registration group. Barack was the keynote speaker. He introduced Joe Biden John Kerry at the 2004 Democrat convention. And sure enough, Michelle was the keynote speaker that introduced Joe Biden at the 2020 Democrat convention. Barack wrote 2 autobiographies, Dreams from My Father and The Audacity of Hope, before he ran for president. Very strange when a very relatively young person writes an autobiography. It's because they have a political agenda. They're trying to tell a story that's pretty much not true to promote themselves for an office. Sure enough, Michelle wrote 2 autobiographies, Becoming, which is a big international bestseller, and her second one was called The Light We Carry. They're both also on Netflix as movies. And I see that the Democrat Party, I think, has set it up for Michelle. They moved the first primary out of Iowa, where she would have had to campaign in 100 counties, to South Carolina, where half the Democrat Party electorate is going to be African American for the primaries. It's also a state Michelle claims as her adopted home state because her grandparents are from there. And they put the Democrat National Convention in Chicago, of all places, her hometown. So I think it's coming. We got a December 23rd deadline coming up to get on all the primary ballots to get your signatures in. So I think in the next few weeks, we're going to see Michelle make a move.
Joel Gilbert. The book and the film is Michelle Obama 2024. If you're listening to it, definitely go to MichelleObama24.com. He's holding it up if you're watching this on one of the websites that we hope will not censor this, but that's par for the course in America. I got to give you this, Joel. You know, you brought a lot of information out, and I want to go into this documentary in general right now, because I used to be a very leftist, liberal, Bernie Sanders supporter. Throughout COVID, my eyes really opened up to see the nonsense, whether it was censorship, whether it was the mandates, that was really going on in this country. And it seems like the leftists are just keep on pushing these very anti-freedom pushes. And it seems like they're not going to stop. So your book and your film really showed a lot about the Obamas that a lot of people don't know. I know people that don't even know it's Michelle Robinson. If I said Michelle Robinson on the street, I bet you over half of the people wouldn't even know who the heck Michelle Robinson is. They know Michelle Obama, but they don't know Michelle Robinson. I want you to talk about growing up in Chicago, Michelle Robinson, the people that knew her. I know you talked about this a lot in the book and the film, that it's a very different Michelle Robinson that was on the campaign trail with Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012.
Right. In my film, look, we find out that Michelle Robinson Obama is a total phony. It turns out I learned from going to Chicago. I spoke to her elementary and high school classmates, teachers, and principals, 3 of her boyfriends, her mother, her dance instructor, her thesis advisor at Princeton, talked to a ton of people. And a completely different picture of Michelle emerges. Michelle's been pushing a story for years, ever since she came on the scene in 2008, that she's someone from the South Side of Chicago, that she suffered discrimination growing up, that she was held back in life because of her skin color. She'd say success was not meant for a little Black girl like me from the South Side, trying to promote this romantic idea of someone overcoming obstacles. And I think she did that in contrast to Barack, who was looked at as an elitist Harvard lawyer. Now, Michelle, it turns out, was also an elitist Harvard lawyer, but she didn't want people to know that. She turns out, had a terrible relationship with the Black community growing up in Chicago. When she was a kid, she refused to study with other Black kids. They had a all-Black high school called South Shore, 1 block from her house. She refused to go there. Also, her brother, they went an hour away to study at a Catholic school and a magnet school with whites, even though they weren't even Catholic. Michelle had no Black friends growing up. Michelle even talks about in her book and on her book tour about the Black kids would beat her up. They'd tell her she was acting white and talking white. Michelle writes about getting in a fist fight with a girl who called her an Oreo, which is a racial insult. It means you're Black on the outside, but you're really white on the inside. So Michelle had no Black friends. She was pretty much afraid to go out of her house. She even says that. I got her on tape. She lived in fear of the Black community. She didn't like Black people. And when she got jobs in Chicago, her first job was working for the mayor of Chicago, assistant planning commissioner, and she started to get her revenge on the Black community. She kicked 20,000 Blacks out of their home at Cabrini Green. It was the projects, and the white Democrat liberals wanted that land to give away to Democrat donor developers like Tony Rezko. So whenever white liberals had problems with Black people and couldn't hire a white person to do it, they'd hire Michelle, who would do their dirty work. So having proven how callous she was toward the Black community, Michelle was hired by the University of Chicago Medical Center. They were having problems with the Black residents on the South Side, were using their emergency room, and a lot of them didn't have good insurance, and they were losing money. So they hired Michelle to do their dirty work. Michelle would kick them out, put them in these vans, and dump them back on the South Side at these crappy clinics in strip malls. And Michelle would say, this is going to be good for you. They couldn't hire a white person to deny access to health care to the Black community, but Michelle was willing to do that. So Michelle has a terrible relationship exploiting the Black community and abusing them in her career and being afraid of them and never having anything to do with them as a kid. That's why, as a politician, she makes up these phony stories to manipulate minorities in the Black community into thinking, hey, I'm just an ordinary Black person. I'm just like you. I'm from the South Side. Michelle's not even from the South Side of Chicago. She's from South Shore, which was an exclusive community on Lake Michigan. Jesse Jackson has a beautiful mansion in South Shore. He's never said he's from the South Side. So Michelle's entire life story that she promotes in her books, like Becoming and her Light We Carry and the story she's been telling for years, are completely made up and fake. And it's all about manipulating Black voters to get power.
Joel, when you said about her kicking all these people out of their houses, for people that are listening to this on the radio, and if it does go on to the YouTube, for people listening there also, there was an issue with the Obama library where they were pushing a big land grab also. and stealing a lot of public land. So they're out of office and they're doing the same stuff as they were doing before they got into office.
Yeah, I'll point out that when they made the Obama library, the Obamas did the same thing. They want to appear to be black or be authentically black or have anything to do or give a darn about black people. So they, even though the Obamas moved to Hyde Park when they got married, mostly white neighborhood, they have a house in Martha's Vineyard, climate denying house on the ocean there, with white liberal elites. They said, well, we have put our presidential library, we'll put it on the south side of Chicago to try to prove once again, to trick black voters into thinking they care about them in some way. But what they did is they took over this park called Jackson Park. And what they did was it pushed a lot of minorities and pushed housing prices up. And they spent 5 years arguing about the local community wanted more contracts for minorities, and it was just been a big mess. I think it's finally getting under construction. But it's just the hypocritical part of the Obamas is that they really are Oreos, like the kids would call Michelle growing up. They're black on the outside, but they're really white on the inside. You know, when Barack ran for president, black people didn't think he was black. They thought he was a white guy. He grew up with white grandparents in Hawaii, went to Harvard. It took a lot of work by Michelle and a lot of these fake stories on the campaign trail to convince black voters that he was even black. Michelle, ironically, has the same problem. She spent her childhood running away from black people, refused to study with them, exploited them in her career. I think black voters are no fools. And if they understood that Michelle exploited them and refused to study with them, and that she's faking all of her stories about racism in order to get their votes, I don't think they would support the Obamas.
I want to move into the Weather Underground. Bill Ayers and that group, Bernardine Dohr. Can you talk about that role of that group with influencing Michelle Robinson?
Yeah, it's a pretty shocking discovery. You might remember in 2008 when Michelle came on the scene, she was giving these speeches every night, very anti-American. She'd say things like, you can't pay your mortgage, you can't afford food, you can't afford healthcare in this country, you don't get sick in this country. Just very nasty anti-American speeches every night. And people were like, where in the world does she get this from? And she talked a lot about fear. We're all afraid of each other. We all live in fear, all this crazy stuff. But the media didn't really pick up on it until she went over the top one night when Barack won a primary. She said, oh, for the first time in my life, I'm proud of my country. Now, she said a lot worse things than that, but the media picked up on that. And that's when the Obama campaign came to her and said, look, we're going to lose because of you. Now people are paying attention. They're going to hate you. So the next day she said, oh, I hate politics. I just want to be the mom in chief. She kind of took a step back. But it showed that Michelle was radicalized. And I found out very shocking that Michelle was very close to Bernardine Dohrn. She worked with her for 2 years at the Sidley Austin law firm. And then Michelle and Barack would go to the home of the husband and wife terrorist duo, Bernardine Dohrn and Bill Ayers, for dinner in the 90s every week for years. So that's where Michelle got the politics of fear. All that nonsense comes from being radicalized, I believe, by Bernardine Dohrn. And it's pretty shocking when you realize that this couple of domestic terrorists from the Weather Underground is a Marxist terrorist group that wanted to overthrow the country with bombings and murdering policemen. How much influence they had on the Obamas. It's just shocking.
You feel like this is kind of a setup? Barack Obama becomes president. There was a lot of guys, even if we go back into that, and then I know you know the story, obviously 2004, but even before that, when he was running for Senate, before he got elected in 2004, there was a Republican that was running. His name escapes me right now, but he was very popular. Scandal came out against him. There was a lot of people that were going to run for that seat in general that were Democrats. All these scandals came out against them. And then Barack Obama jumps into that seat. He makes that fabulous speech. And then all of a sudden rides up. And then he wins the presidency. And then now we're talking about maybe his wife does. I think it's almost like a Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton story, a little bit different, obviously. But we get the connection that Bill was president. Hillary wants that seat. Michelle and Barack are the same way as Bill and Hillary Clinton. Do you agree with that also? Or no?
Yeah, they're very similar couples. Of course, Hillary's from Chicago, too. She's a Chicago radical. But the couples are very similar. The husband in the couple of the Obamas and the Clintons are kind of very friendly and kind of give some good inspirational speeches, but are very disorganized. And it's the woman in the relationship is the one that drives the candidacy. I talked to a lot of people who said that it was Michelle Obama that is the one that pushed Barack in politics. She was his treasurer in his first state Senate campaign. She's the one that got a job at the mayor's office for the purpose of getting Barack contacts. Like that's how she met Tony Rezko and some of these donors and Valerie Jarrett. So Michelle was instrumental in saying, you've got to go here, you got to talk to this person, you got to talk to that person, similar to what Hillary did for Bill Clinton. And just like Hillary Clinton, Michelle is very political. She's been political all her life. She's from a political family. And I'm convinced she's been doing everything to prepare to run for president. Very curiously, Michelle usually tweets 3 times a day for years. She's got 100 million social media followers. And for years, 3 times a day, it's political statements, outreach to women and minorities, nonstop. Since the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, Michelle has not posted anything on social media. It's about 28 days, nothing. So I think she doesn't want to take a side, so she can't say anything. She doesn't want to offend any voter groups. So I think she's up to something, and we're going to see her make a move.
You say that you think the move is going to come within the next 2 or 3 months. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, there's a couple theories. My pal Ted Cruz said he thought that Biden would go through the primary process, and then sometime in the spring or summer next year, Biden would drop out for any number of reasons. Could be health, could be being impeached. And then the delegates would be free to turn to Michelle Obama. That was his theory. I believe it's going to happen sooner. There's a December 23rd deadline to get on all the primary ballots, to get your signatures in. And the Obamas have a nationwide organization for over 10 years called Organizing for America.
Right.
So if Michelle literally declares in the next few weeks, sometimes in November, she'd have no problem getting all her signatures together.
Well, time will tell on that. I want to talk about this. You know, when it comes to the Republicans, who would be the best person to take on somebody like Michelle Obama? Obviously, we have President Trump and Ron DeSantis are probably the only two that I would think would have a shot. Maybe you have somebody different in mind.
It certainly looks like the Republicans are going to turn to Donald Trump unless the Democrats succeed in putting him in prison or stripping him off the ballots, which they're trying very hard to do. But I think Donald Trump has the best chance because he had a tremendous record as president. In contrast, every day of the Biden administration makes Trump more popular because of the chaos, inflation, and problems being caused by Biden's policies, which are essentially Barack Obama's policies. The Obamas actually never left D.C., even though they have the climate-denying home in Martha's Vineyard. They have a house in D.C., and Barack consults regularly with all the people from his administration, which make up about 70% of the Biden administration, including Biden himself. But if I was Donald Trump, I would start now tweeting and saying things like, Michelle Obama, are you going to apologize for what you did to the Black community in Chicago? Michelle, how much money did you make denying access to healthcare to Black people? And why did you illegally dump them back on the South Side? And Michelle, why did you kick 20,000 Blacks out of their homes? Those would open up a can of worms. And I think it would have a good chance of undermining Michelle's base of support. She's very, very insecure about her relationship with the minority communities because she knows how much she abused them in her career and how much she feared them as a kid.
Yeah, but the liberals in the mainstream media would go after him as that's very racist and all these other comments.
Well, look, the liberal media, look, Michelle checks a lot of boxes. She brings a lot to the table. It allows the media to say that if you don't agree with Michelle, you must be racist or sexist. Michelle also brings plausibility. If the media says Joe Biden is leading in all the swing states and all the polls, no one's going to believe it. If the media, if they say on the election night, they say, well, Joe Biden won the election, no one's going to believe it. But if Michelle's running, you'd say, well, if they say Michelle won, you'd say, well, I guess I believe it because she's so popular.
Yeah. But do you think Trump will beat Michelle Obama, or do you believe that it's going to be extremely close? Or because remember, we've heard, and I don't want to dabble too deep into this, about the drop boxes, the absentee ballots. We saw this game in 2020. We saw this in 2022 in different states. So they know how to play the game. And you know, Chicago is Bill Daley country. These people like Michelle and Barack Obama, the Clintons, they know how to play the get out the vote game. They know how to play all these games with the ballots as they've been doing the past, you know, many years for that matter.
Yeah, look, socialist policies don't work. They've never worked in history. And that's why socialist governments had to force unfair elections, force people to work using secret police, murder their dissidents because they oppose what they're doing, because the policies don't work. Americans will never buy into the socialist nonsense that the government should own all your property. You're going to look alike and sound alike and do everything we say. Americans will never buy into that.
I gotta just interrupt, Joel, and I apologize for interrupting, but there was a lot of people that went along with the cultish behavior during COVID-19, the masks, the vaccines in general. We've saw what the masks do to people. We've saw what the vaccines have done to people. We don't have to reiterate that on here. So I don't know, Joel.
Well, yeah, but you see, they had to use totalitarianism. They had to take over social media. The FBI took over social media.
Correct.
Had to censor anybody that said anything different. They had to ban drugs. So they had to use totalitarian methods to get their, you know, flawed ideology to exist. So cheating in elections with ballot stuffing and voting machines and you name it, it's just par for the course because their policies don't work. So I think in a fair election, I think Donald Trump can make the case that Michelle is a phony. Everybody needs to see my film and book and see her whole life history is nothing like she tells. It's just as fabricated as Barack Obama's. And the policies of Joe Biden are the same as Barack Obama's. And Michelle has never had an original thought in her life. She just goes along with whatever the Democrats are saying. You can look at her Twitter account or any of her speeches. She just says whatever they're saying. And I think those two ideologies, the Donald Trump pro-America, make America first agenda easily wins in a fair election.
Let's end with this. You know, we've talked about a lot here today. As far as today, what we've spoken about in the book and also the film, what do you hope people leave our interview with and obviously leave from reading the book and also watching the film in general?
Well, first of all, you can watch the film live stream. You can watch it right now on salemnow.com or Amazon Prime Video. And then the DVD and book version are also on Amazon.com. And you just got to watch it. I mean, it'll change your life. You'll learn so much about the Obamas, Michelle Obama, her politics, because I think it's coming. So you're going to take away the idea of how phony and fake the Obamas are and how they're so manipulative and how they've ruined race relations in this country. When Obama was elected president, the polls said that 70% of both blacks and whites thought race relations were good. When Obama left office 8 years later, it was opposite. Only 30% of both sides thought it was any good. So they ruined race relations for power. They're very cynical, manipulative people that care more about power than anything else. So you're going to learn a lot. There's so much to learn about it. Please, get the book and watch the film.
I'll just end with this last statement, just teeing off from what you just stated, Joel. We saw that the Black Lives Matter, all that stuff happened. Trayvon Martin, I know you made a video about that, a film, I should state, about that. All that happened during Barack Obama, Michael Brown. All this stuff happened during that time. And he didn't bring people together. He pushed people apart during that time. People like me that used to be there, and we do have a lot of people that are leftists that watch this program. I used to be a very far to the left person. I voted for Bernie Sanders in 16 and 20. I voted for Joe Biden. I voted for Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama twice. I was in there. It took COVID-19 and all the nonsense during that time for me to wake up and see what the hell is going on in this country. And I'm very grateful I did wake up. And I do hope people that are watching this and definitely listening to this on the radio stations, because we know that will definitely come out on those stations, really just give this man a chance. Give the movie a chance. Give the book a chance, whatever it is. You should be looking at both sides, not just watching MSNBC or Fox or Newsmax The list goes on and on. Watch both sides and then put your critical thinking cap on and make a damn decision. That's all people ask. And I'll let you have the last word, Joel.
Well, I'm glad you joined the right side of things. I can't imagine what was wrong with you that you voted for those strange characters and their strange policies.
A lot of brainwashing going on.
Glad you've broken through and seen the reality of how great American values are and how great the Constitution is and how great America is without these leftists trying to ruin it with these crazy policies and open borders and inflation and wars. And it's going to take a Trump victory, I think, to save the country.
Agree 100%. And go again, Joel Gilbert. And the website is michelleobama24.com. Again, you can watch the movie on Amazon Prime Video. Definitely check out the video and the movie, whatever you want to call it. I say video, film, movie, whatever you want to call it. It's definitely worth the shot. Again, I hope people check it out. Joel, thanks so much for your time tonight. I appreciate you.
Okay. Thanks so much.